The stars had never seemed so close yet so far away. Captain Sarah Okonkwo stood on the bridge of the Endeavour, watching the swirling colors of the wormhole collapse behind them. They had done it. Humanity had finally broken free from the solar system and reached beyond the edge of known space. Her crew of 43 men and women from 12 different countries had just made history. The first human vessel to travel faster than light had arrived in what the astronomers back home called the Sagittarius frontier. Sarah's second officer, Lieutenant Marcus Webb, checked his instruments for the third time in as many minutes. His hands shook slightly. They all felt it, the weight of what they had accomplished. 200 years of dreaming, 50 years of building, and now they were here. The wormhole generator behind them was the size of a small building, barely fit in the cargo bay, and consumed enough power to light up half of Europe. But it worked. "Captain, I'm picking up something," Marcus said, his voice tight. "Multiple contacts. They're big. Really big." Sarah moved to his station. The radar screen showed 7 objects, each one at least twice the size of the Endeavour. They were arranged in a perfect semicircle, blocking any forward movement. Her heart rate picked up, but she kept her voice calm. "Hail them. All frequencies. Let them know we come in peace." The response came within seconds. A screen flickered to life, showing a being unlike anything Sarah had ever imagined. It was crystalline, its body made of what looked like living glass that shifted through colors like a prism. Geometric patterns moved beneath its surface. Where a face should be, there was only a smooth plane that somehow conveyed an expression of cold superiority. "Unidentified vessel," the being said. Its voice came through perfectly translated into English, though Sarah had no idea how. "You have entered space governed by the Galactic Council. By Protocol 773, all newcomer species must submit to immediate technological evaluation. Power down your propulsion systems and prepare to be boarded." Sarah exchanged glances with Marcus. They had prepared for first contact, run simulations, studied every possibility. But being ordered around within minutes of arrival had not been in the script. Still, they had come here to make friends, not enemies. She took a breath and nodded to her communications officer. "This is Captain Sarah Okonkwo of the human vessel Endeavour, representing the United Earth Coalition. We acknowledge your authority and will comply with your protocols. We welcome the chance to meet you." The crystalline being's surface rippled. Sarah thought it might have been amusement, but she could not be sure. How diplomatic. "We are the Vrilnathi. I am Council Representative Thelnara, assigned to first contact evaluation. Maintain your position. We will come to you." The screen went dark. Sarah turned to her crew. "All hands prepare for visitors. Scientific team to the docking bay. Security, keep your weapons holstered but ready. We're making history today. Let's make it the good kind." 30 minutes later, Sarah stood in the main corridor as the airlock hissed open. Thelnara entered first, followed by 2 other aliens. One looked like a floating jellyfish made of purple energy, its tendrils drifting in a non-existent current. The other was roughly humanoid but covered in silver fur with 3 eyes arranged in a triangle on its face. Behind them came what looked like robots carrying scanning equipment. "Welcome aboard the Endeavour," Sarah said, extending her hand in the traditional human greeting. Thelnara looked at her hand as if she had offered it a dead fish. "We do not engage in fluid transfer rituals," Thelnara said. "I am here with Evaluator Sorlen of the Sorani Collective and Technician Grex of the Haltorian Republic. We will inspect your vessel and catalog your technological level. This is standard procedure for all species seeking council recognition." Sarah lowered her hand, feeling her cheeks warm with embarrassment. She covered it by gesturing down the corridor. "Of course. Our chief engineer, Dr. James Rodriguez, will show you our systems. We've prepared full documentation of our capabilities. The inspection took 6 hours." Sarah followed the evaluation team through the ship, watching as they scanned everything from the fusion reactors to the life support systems. Dr. Rodriguez explained each system with pride, detailing how humanity had overcome countless obstacles to reach the stars. The team listened in silence, making notes on devices that floated in the air beside them. When they reached the weapons bay, Sarah noticed Thelnara's surface shift to a darker shade. The Vrilnati moved closer to the mounted railgun, a massive electromagnetic accelerator capable of launching a tungsten slug at 30 kilometers per second. It was humanity's pride, a weapon that could punch through asteroids and defend the ship from debris or threats. "What is this?" Thelnara asked. That's our primary defensive weapon, Dr. Rodriguez said, patting the railgun's housing. It's an electromagnetic mass accelerator. We call it a railgun. It uses magnetic fields to launch a projectile at extremely high speeds. This model can fire a 2-kilogram slug at roughly 30,000 meters per second. The kinetic energy alone is devastating. The jellyfish alien, Sorlen, pulsed a bright purple. Sarah had learned that meant surprise or shock in their species. You use kinetic projectiles? Physical matter launched through space? Yes, Rodriguez said, looking confused. It's very effective. We've tested it extensively. The impact force is equivalent to several tons of conventional explosives. And there's no radiation or energy signature to detect before impact. Thelnara turned to face Sarah. You wage war by throwing metal at your enemies? Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. The way Thelnara said it made it sound primitive, barbaric. We've only ever used these weapons in tests and simulations. Humanity hasn't engaged in warfare for nearly 60 years. These are purely defensive. Defensive, Thelnara repeated. The word sounded like an insult. I see. Continue the inspection. The mood grew colder as they moved through the ship. When Rodriguez showed them the nuclear warheads kept in secure storage, Thelnara actually recoiled. The technician Grex made a chittering sound that the translator rendered as disgust. You still use fission weapons? Grex asked. Uncontrolled nuclear chain reactions as armaments? They're a last resort, Sarah said, her patience wearing thin. We haven't detonated a nuclear weapon in anger for over 2 centuries. These are deterrents, nothing more. Deterrents, Sorlen pulsed. Against whom? Yourselves? The inspection ended in the conference room. Sarah had her senior staff present while the evaluation team conferred among themselves in whispers and pulses of light. Finally, Thelnara stood and addressed the humans. We have completed our evaluation of human technology. Your species has demonstrated functional faster-than-light capability through crude wormhole generation. Your power systems are adequate if inefficient, relying on nuclear fusion rather than zero-point extraction or quantum tapping. Your weapon systems are, to be frank, shocking. Sarah's jaw tightened. Shocking? You utilize kinetic projectiles, explosive chemical reactions, and unshielded fission devices. Your defensive capabilities consist of primitive armor plating and point defense systems. You have no energy shields, no matter disintegration beams, no particle weapons, no gravitational manipulation. You fight as your ancestors did millennia ago by throwing rocks, only now the rocks move faster. Dr. Rodriguez stood up, his face red. Our weapons are highly effective. The mathematics doesn't lie. Kinetic energy increases with the square of velocity. Our railguns deliver more destructive force than most energy weapons could achieve with comparable power consumption. Effective against whom? Thelnara asked. Yourselves? In council space, every civilized species has moved beyond such crude methods. We use energy shields that render kinetic weapons obsolete. We teleport forces directly to targets. Bypassing all physical defenses, we manipulate matter at the quantum level. Your weapons would be toys against any council military. The room fell silent. Sarah could see the anger and humiliation on her crew's faces. They had worked so hard, sacrificed so much to reach the stars. And now this crystalline alien was dismissing centuries of human achievement as primitive garbage. We came here in peace, Sarah said quietly. We came to learn, to share, to join the galactic community. Are you telling us we're not welcome? Thelnara's surface rippled. The Galactic Council welcomes all sentient species. However, there are protocols. Based on our evaluation, humanity is classified as Category 7, pre-civilized species. This classification comes with certain restrictions for your own protection and the stability of council space. What kind of restrictions? Ambassador Zhang Wei asked. He had been silent throughout the inspection, but now his diplomatic training took over. Sorlen pulsed a soft blue, which Sarah had learned meant official pronouncement. Humanity will be confined to your home system and any colony worlds you currently occupy within 10 light-years of Earth. You are prohibited from establishing new colonies beyond this boundary. Trade with council species will be limited to approved goods and technologies. You may not purchase or acquire military technology from any council member. These restrictions will remain in place until humanity demonstrates significant technological advancement, particularly in the areas of warfare and defense. You're boxing us in, Marcus said, putting us in a cage. We are protecting you, Thelnara said. And protecting the council. A species that still uses kinetic weapons is not ready for the broader galaxy. The Galactic Council has stood for 12,000 years because we maintain certain standards. When humanity abandons its barbaric methods and develops proper civilization-level technology, you will be welcomed as equals. Until then, this is the best we can offer. Ambassador Zhang Wei stood, his composure perfect despite the anger Sarah knew he must be feeling. On behalf of the United Earth Coalition, I formally protest this classification. Humanity's technological approach may differ from yours, but that does not make it inferior or barbaric. We request a full council hearing to appeal this decision. Your protest is noted, Thelnara said. A hearing will be scheduled within the next galactic year. Until then, the restrictions stand. We will escort you back to the boundary of restricted space. I suggest you use this time to consider the path forward for your species. Abandon your primitive weapons. Embrace the technologies of civilized peoples. Then perhaps we can meet again as equals. The evaluation team left without ceremony. Sarah stood on the bridge as the Vrelnathi ships formed up around the Endeavor, guiding them back toward human space. The crew was silent. The joy of first contact turned to bitter disappointment. "Captain," Marcus said softly. "Orders?" Sarah watched the alien ships on her screen. They were beautiful, elegant, far more advanced than anything humanity could build. But they were also arrogant, dismissive, blind to anything that did not fit their narrow view of civilization. She thought about the railgun in the weapons bay, the product of human ingenuity and determination. She thought about the nuclear warheads, terrible weapons that humanity had learned to control and contain. She thought about everything her species had overcome to reach the stars. "Plot a course for Earth," she said, "and send a coded message ahead to Fleet Command. Tell them we made contact. Tell them it didn't go well. And tell them we need to be ready for anything." "Ready for what?" Marcus asked. Sarah's reflection stared back at her from the dark screen. "For the day we prove them wrong. For the day we show them that humanity's way of reaching for the stars is just as valid as theirs. And for the day they realize that calling our weapons primitive doesn't make them any less dangerous." The Endeavor turned toward home, carrying news that would change humanity forever. Behind them, the Council ships dispersed, their mission complete. In the vast stations and worlds of Council space, humanity became a footnote, a curious species too backward to matter. The Vrelnathi filed their report and moved on to other concerns. The Serani returned to their meditation pools. The Haltorians went back to their laboratories. None of them considered that dismissing humanity might be a mistake. None of them wondered what a species that had survived by fighting with rocks and fire might do when told their weapons were obsolete. None of them asked what would happen when humanity decided to prove the Council wrong. That question would be answered soon enough. But first, humanity had work to do. They had been called primitive, barbaric, pre-civilized. They had been caged and restricted and dismissed. Sarah knew her species well enough to predict what would come next. Humanity did not respond well to being told they could not do something. The galaxy was about to learn that lesson the hard way. 5 years changed everything. The humiliation of first contact had burned through humanity like wildfire. Every nation, every colony, every person who heard the story of how the Galactic Council had dismissed humanity as primitive felt the same anger, the same determination. Earth's factories ran around the clock. Research stations from Luna to Europa worked on projects that would have seemed impossible just a decade before. Humanity was preparing for something, though no one would say exactly what. The 3 colony worlds beyond Earth flourished. New Terra, with its Earth-like climate and breathable atmosphere, now held 3 million souls. Olympus Station, orbiting a gas giant rich in helium-3, had grown from a mining outpost to a thriving industrial center. Kepler 442b, the furthest colony at 9.8 light-years from Earth, was humanity's agricultural jewel, feeding the growing population scattered across the stars. Fleet Admiral James Kowalski stood on the observation deck of the Tycho station, watching the construction yards below. 43 warships were under construction, each one larger and more heavily armed than the Endeavor. The Council had restricted humanity to 10 light-years from Earth. They had said nothing about building up defenses within that sphere. Humanity had taken full advantage of that loophole. "Admiral, we have an urgent transmission from New Terra," his aide said. "It's Governor Chen. She says it's Priority Alpha." Kowalski felt his stomach drop. Priority Alpha meant only one thing: attack. He hurried to the communications center, his mind racing through scenarios. Pirates? Some rogue faction from Council Space? An accident? Governor Chen's face appeared on the screen, and Kowalski knew immediately it was worse than he had imagined. She was in a combat bunker, alarms wailing in the background, her usually calm face pale and tight with stress. Admiral, we're under attack. Alien forces have appeared in orbit. They didn't come through any wormhole or jump point. They just appeared. Thousands of them. They're teleporting down to the surface right now. What species? Kowalski demanded. Identify them. They're insectoid, 8-limbed, about 2 meters tall. Chitinous armor, mandibles, compound eyes. They're not Council species we recognize. Wait, we're getting a transmission. The screen split. A creature appeared that made Kowalski's skin crawl. It was indeed insectoid, but massive, its carapace covered in scarred armor plates. Its mandibles clicked as it spoke, the translator rendering its words in cold mechanical tones. Humans of New Terra, I am War Prime Zizexthak of the Kresh Dominion. Your world is now property of the Kresh. You have 1 cycle to evacuate all personnel and resources. Any resistance will be met with immediate extermination. Your species is weak, your territory undefended. The Council has declared you unworthy of protection. We claim what is ours by right of strength. The transmission ended. Governor Chen's face filled the screen again. Admiral, they're landing everywhere. 40,000 of them at least, maybe more. They have energy weapons, personal shields, and they're teleporting in faster than we can respond. Our PDF forces are engaging, but the weapons aren't working like they should. The energy beams are cutting through our armor like paper. Kowalski's mind raced. 40,000 enemy troops with teleportation and energy weapons against a planetary defense force of maybe 5,000, equipped with conventional arms. It should be a massacre, should be. Governor, deploy Contingency 7. Everything we've been preparing. Don't hold anything back. Chen's eyes widened. Everything? Are you sure? The Council said our weapons were primitive. Let's see how primitive they really are. I'm sending the 3rd Fleet. They'll be there in 8 hours. Hold until then. Understood. New Terra out. Kowalski turned to his staff. Battle stations. Deploy the 3rd Fleet to New Terra immediately. Send a message to Earth. The Kresh Dominion has declared war on humanity. Request authorization for unrestricted engagement. The answer came back in 3 minutes. It was short. Authorized. Show them what humans can do. On New Terra, Colonel Marcus Webb stood in the command center of Firebase Delta, watching the tactical display with grim satisfaction. Yes, the same Marcus Webb who had served on the Endeavor 5 years ago. He had transferred to the Colonial Defense Force specifically for moments like this. The Kresh were learning that humanity's primitive weapons had some advantages the Council had never considered. The Kresh troops materialized in precise formations, their teleportation technology allowing them to bypass all conventional defenses. They wore personal energy shields, shimmering fields designed to absorb and dissipate directed energy weapons. Against the plasma rifles and laser cannons of Council species, those shields were nearly impenetrable. Against a hypersonic tungsten slug traveling at 30,000 meters per second, they were useless. The railgun emplacements opened fire. The Kresh never heard the shots coming. Kinetic weapons had no energy signature, no particle beam to detect, no charging cycle to warn of incoming fire. Just solid metal moving faster than sound, faster than most sensors could track. The tungsten slugs tore through the Kresh shields as if they were not there because the shields were designed for energy, not mass. The first volley killed 300 Kresh in the opening seconds. Their shields sparked and failed, their armor crumpled like tin foil, and their bodies were reduced to pulp by the kinetic impacts. The survivors scattered, their compound eyes wide with shock. Target the concentrations, Marcus ordered. Don't let them regroup. Missile batteries fire at will. The missiles were another surprise. Humanity had refined chemical propulsion to an art form over centuries. The missiles were not guided by sophisticated AI or quantum targeting systems. They were dumb rockets with heavy explosive payloads and a simple guidance system. But they were fast, numerous, and the Kresh teleportation jammers could not stop them because there was nothing to jam. The missiles did not care about shield frequencies or energy signatures. They just exploded. Across the planet, the pattern repeated. The Kresh would teleport in, confident in their superiority. The railguns would open fire, shredding their formations. The missiles would follow up, destroying anything that survived. When Kresh troops tried to take cover in buildings, Humanity deployed its oldest weapon, artillery. Massive shells arced through the air and smashed into crash positions, bringing down entire structures. War Prime Zyziexthak watched from his command ship in orbit, his mandibles clicking in agitation. What is happening? Why are our shields failing? His technician, a smaller Kresh with lighter chitin, worked frantically at his console. The humans are not using energy weapons. They are using kinetic projectiles, solid matter accelerated to extreme speeds. Our shields cannot stop them because there is no energy to dissipate. That is impossible. No civilized species uses such crude weapons. The Council assured us the humans were primitive, weak, unable to defend themselves. The Council was correct about one thing, War Prime. The humans are primitive, but primitive does not mean ineffective. Zixthak slammed his forelimbs on the console. Deploy more troops, overwhelm them with numbers. We committed 40,000 warriors to this attack. Use them all. But the numbers were already turning against the Kresh. Every minute more Kresh fell to railgun fire, missile strikes, and artillery barrages. The humans had another advantage the Kresh had not anticipated: experience. Humanity had spent thousands of years perfecting the art of killing each other with kinetic weapons. They knew how to lead a target, how to predict movement, how to maximize damage with minimal resources. The Kresh had spent centuries relying on technology to do their fighting for them. When that technology failed, they did not know how to adapt. Colonel Webb watched the tactical display as the Kresh numbers dwindled. 38,000, 35,000, 30,000. The enemy was retreating to their landing zones, trying to teleport back to their ships, but humanity had planned for that too. Activate the inhibitor fields, Marcus ordered. Around each major Kresh concentration, human forces activated devices that had been carefully positioned during the first minutes of the battle. They were crude by Council standards, just powerful electromagnetic generators designed to create interference. They did not block teleportation entirely, but they did slow it down, make it imprecise, cause delays, long enough for the railguns to acquire targets, long enough for the missiles to reach them. The Kresh trapped on the surface realized they were being slaughtered. Some tried to surrender. Marcus ordered his troops to accept them, though he kept the Kresh under heavy guard. Others fought to the last, their energy weapons finally finding targets as human forces moved in to secure the perimeter. Humanity took losses. 300 soldiers died in the battle. Another 500 were wounded. It was the highest casualty count humanity had suffered in combat in over a century. But when the sun set on New Terra that day, 38,000 Kresh lay dead or captured. Only 2,000 made it back to their ships. War Prime Zyziexthak sat in his command chair, his body trembling with shock and rage. His glorious Dominion forces, unstoppable against every Council species they had faced, had been decimated by a pre-civilized species using weapons from their own barbaric past. It was impossible. It was humiliating. It was a disaster. Withdraw, he ordered. Take us back to Kresh space. We must report this to the Dominion Council. As the Kresh ships vanished into wormholes, Admiral Kowalski's Third Fleet arrived in orbit. They found a planet battered but unbowed, its people victorious and its enemies fleeing. Kowalski stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Gettysburg, and watched the footage from the surface battles. He saw the railguns firing, the missiles launching, the artillery pounding Kresh positions. He saw human soldiers using tactics that were old when Rome fell, updated with modern technology but fundamentally unchanged. Send a message to all Council frequencies, Kowalski ordered. Full broadcast. I want everyone to see this. His communications officer nodded. Ready, Admiral. Kowalski faced the camera, his expression hard. This is Fleet Admiral James Kowalski of the United Earth Coalition. Today the Kresh Dominion attacked New Terra, killing 17 civilians and wounding 43 others before our defense forces could respond. The Kresh War Prime informed us that the Galactic Council had declared humanity unworthy of protection. He thought this made us easy prey. He paused, letting the words sink in. The Kresh deployed 40,000 warriors with personal shields, energy weapons, and teleportation technology. Technologies the Council called civilized and advanced. They were confident in their superiority. They expected us to fall before them like all the other species they had conquered. Another pause. The bridge was silent, every eye on their admiral. The Kresh lost 38,000 warriors in 47 minutes. We used railguns, missiles, artillery, and small arms fire. Weapons the Council called primitive and barbaric. Weapons the Council said were obsolete. The Kresh survivors are fleeing back to their space, and we have 2,000 prisoners who will tell their people what happened here today. Kowalski leaned closer to the camera. So let me be very clear to the Galactic Council and any other species watching this. You told us our weapons were primitive. You called us barbaric and pre-civilized. You restricted us to our own space because you thought we were weak. You were wrong. Our weapons work just fine. Kinetic weapons do not care about energy shields. Missiles do not care about teleportation jammers. Artillery does not care about advanced sensors. And human determination does not care about your classifications. He straightened. The Kresh learned this today. We hope it is a lesson others will remember. Humanity does not seek war. We came to the stars in peace. But we will defend our worlds, our people, and our right to exist. With railguns, missiles, and any other weapon we deem necessary. If that makes us primitive in your eyes, so be it. We will be primitive and alive rather than civilized and conquered. The transmission ended. Across Council space, on 1,000 worlds and 1,000,000 ships, aliens watched the footage of the Battle of New Terra. They saw the Kresh warriors falling by the hundreds, their shields useless, their confidence shattered. They saw human weapons, crude and simple by Council standards, proving devastatingly effective. They heard Admiral Kowalski's words and realized that the Council had made a terrible miscalculation. Humanity was not weak. They were different. And different, as the Kresh had learned, could be far more dangerous than anyone had anticipated. In the crystal spires of the Council's homeworld, Representative Thelnara watched the same footage with growing dread. The Vrelnothi had dismissed humanity as primitive and boxed them into their home system. Now that boxed species had just defeated one of the galaxy's most aggressive military powers, using the exact weapons the Council had mocked. We may have made an error, Thelnara said to the Council chamber. The humans are more formidable than we assessed. Council Arbiter Velmoth, an ancient being of pure energy, pulsed with what might have been agreement or reproach. You classified them as Category 7. You told them their weapons were obsolete. You restricted their expansion and offered them no path forward except to abandon their methods and adopt ours. And now we see the result. What do you suggest? Thelnara asked. We watch, Velmoth said. We wait. And we hope the Kresh are wise enough not to retaliate. Because if they do, and if the humans respond in kind, we may be witnessing the beginning of something unprecedented. A primitive species that fights like no civilized force can predict or counter. A species we dismissed, caged, and humiliated. A species that now knows exactly how little the Council thinks of them. The Council chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. On New Terra, humanity celebrated their victory. On Earth, Fleet Command began planning for the next battle. And somewhere in the darkness between stars, the Kresh Dominion War Council gathered to discuss their humiliation and plan their revenge. The galaxy was changing. The old order, 12,000 years of Council supremacy, was beginning to crack. And at the heart of that crack was a species armed with railguns, missiles, and a determination forged in the fires of being called primitive. The Council's glory had seemed eternal, but eternity, as humanity was about to prove, was a relative term. The Kresh Dominion did not accept humiliation well. For 6 months, their space fell silent as they regrouped and adapted. Humanity used that time wisely. The victory at New Terra had proven their weapons worked, but it had also revealed vulnerabilities. The Kresh energy weapons had killed 300 soldiers before being neutralized. If the enemy adapted their shields to stop kinetic weapons, humanity needed to be ready. Dr. Amara Okafor stood in the research facility beneath Olympus Station, staring at the device on the examination table. It was a Kresh teleportation unit, salvaged from one of the prisoners captured during the battle. The crystalline matrix at its core pulsed with faint energy, a technology humanity had only dreamed of months ago. Now they were taking it apart, learning its secrets, and preparing to turn the enemy's strength into humanity's advantage. Tell me you've made progress, Admiral Kowalski said, entering the lab with Colonel Webb at his side. The Admiral had personally overseen the interrogation of Kresh prisoners, offering them good treatment in exchange for information. Many had cooperated, still shocked by their defeat and afraid of being returned to their own people in disgrace. Amara smiled. More than progress, Admiral. We understand it now. Teleportation works by creating a quantum tunnel between 2 points in space, essentially folding reality so that here and there become the same place for a fraction of a second. The Kresh use organic crystals grown in zero gravity to generate the field. We don't have those crystals, but we have something better. Better than alien technology? Marcus asked. Human stubbornness, Amara said. We can't grow the crystals, so we synthesized an artificial version using diamond matrices and quantum processors. It's crude compared to the Kresh version. It has a shorter range, requires more power, and the tunnel is less stable. But it works. Kowalski felt his pulse quicken. How short is the range? About 500 kilometers, Amara said. Not enough to teleport between ships or planets, but enough to teleport within a battle space. Enough to put things exactly where we want them. Marcus caught on immediately. You're not thinking about teleporting troops? Hell no, Amara said. Teleporting living things is dangerous. The Kresh have been doing it for centuries and still lose about 1% of their troops to accidents. Teleportation sickness, materialization errors, quantum drift. No, we're going to do what humanity does best. We're going to teleport ammunition. She brought up a simulation on her screen. It showed a human warship engaging a Kresh vessel. Instead of firing a railgun slug across space, giving the enemy time to detect and evade, the ship teleported the slug directly into the target's path. By the time the enemy sensors registered the threat, the projectile was already hitting them. That's brilliant, Kowalski said. No travel time, no warning, no chance to dodge. It gets better, Amara said. We can also teleport mines, missiles, even proximity charges. Imagine a Kresh ship approaching and suddenly being surrounded by a field of explosive devices that weren't there a second ago, or a cluster of tungsten rods appearing inside their shield perimeter. Too close for the shields to activate in time. Can we manufacture these teleporters quickly enough? Kowalski asked. Because I have a feeling we're going to need them soon. As if on cue, the facility's alarm system activated. A lieutenant burst into the lab. Admiral, we have multiple wormhole signatures appearing throughout the system. It's the Kresh. They're back and they brought a lot more ships. The Battle of Olympus Station began 3 hours later. War Prime Zizekthak had returned with 200 warships and 500,000 warriors, 10 times the force that had attacked New Terra. This time, the Kresh came prepared. Their intelligence indicated that human kinetic weapons bypassed energy shields, so they had adapted. Every Kresh soldier now wore layered armor plates designed specifically to stop high-velocity projectiles. Their ships had been fitted with additional armor and point defense systems calibrated to intercept railgun slugs. This time, humans die, Zexthak announced to his fleet. We have adapted to their primitive weapons. Our shields now incorporate particle fields that will slow and stop their projectiles. We will not be caught unprepared again. Olympus Station holds 2 million humans and the industrial capacity to arm their entire species. We will capture or destroy it. For the Dominion! The Kresh fleet moved into position, their ships arranged in a pattern that maximized their shield coverage and minimized vulnerable angles. Zixthak felt confident. The humans had surprised them once with their crude but effective weapons. It would not happen again. Admiral Kowalski watched the enemy fleet approach from the bridge of the Gettysburg, now reinforced with 30 additional warships and the new teleportation weapon systems. Olympus Station's defensive platforms had been upgraded with the same technology. 2 million civilians sheltered in the station's core, protected by layers of armor and structural reinforcement. If the Kresh wanted them, they would have to go through the entirety of the human defense fleet. All ships, this is Admiral Kowalski. The enemy has adapted their shields to counter our railguns. They think this makes them safe. Let's show them how wrong they are. Engage when in range. New protocols, new weapons. Let's make history again. The two fleets met at the outer edge of the system. The Kresh opened fire first, their energy weapons lancing out across the void. Human ships took hits, their armor scoring and melting under the directed energy beams. 2 frigates lost shields and fell back, venting atmosphere. But the human fleet did not retreat. They pushed forward, closing the distance. At 50,000 kilometers, the railguns opened fire. The Kresh were ready, their new shields activated, particle fields forming barriers that slowed the incoming slugs. The tungsten projectiles hit the shields and decelerated, their kinetic energy dissipating. Many were stopped entirely. Others penetrated but with reduced velocity, causing only minor damage to the armored Kresh hulls. Zexthak's mandibles clicked in satisfaction. You see? We have negated their primary weapon. All ships advance. Prepare to deploy troops to the station. Then the first teleportation strike hit. A Kresh battleship suddenly found itself with a 500-kilogram tungsten rod inside its shield perimeter, traveling at 5% the speed of light. The slug had been accelerated by a railgun on a human ship, then teleported to point-blank range. By the time the Kresh sensors detected it, the rod had already punched through the battleship's hull, through 3 decks and into the reactor core. The battleship exploded. The Kresh fleet recoiled in shock as more teleportation strikes materialized. Tungsten rods, missile clusters, proximity mines, all appearing inside shield ranges where defenses could not react in time. The Kresh point defense systems calibrated to track incoming projectiles were useless against threats that appeared instantaneously. "What is this?" Zixthak screamed. "How are their weapons bypassing our shields?" His technician worked frantically, trying to understand. "They are using teleportation, War Prime. They are transporting their projectiles directly to us. Our shields cannot stop something that appears inside their range. That is impossible. Teleportation is our technology. The humans do not have teleportation. They do now, War Prime." The battle became a massacre. Human ships advanced, firing railguns to keep the Kresh shields active and occupied, then teleporting larger projectiles through the shields to strike vulnerable points. Olympus Station's defensive platforms contributed their own teleportation strikes, blanketing the Kresh fleet with explosives and kinetic kill vehicles that appeared without warning. The Kresh tried to adapt. They dispersed their fleet, thinking to make targeting more difficult. The humans responded by teleporting cluster munitions that spread out after materialization, creating fields of explosives impossible to evade. The Kresh tried jamming using their own teleportation inhibitors. The human weapons still worked because they were not teleporting across vast distances where jamming was effective, but rather short tactical jumps that required less power and were harder to block. Zixthak realized with growing horror that his fleet was being destroyed. 30 ships gone in the first 10 minutes, 50 ships after 20 minutes. The humans were using a combination of Kresh technology and their own kinetic weapons to create something neither species had faced before: instantaneous, unstoppable firepower. "Deploy the ground forces," Zixthak ordered in desperation. "Teleport all warriors to the station. Overwhelm their defenses with numbers. If we cannot destroy the station from orbit, we will take it from within." 500,000 Kresh warriors began materializing throughout Olympus Station. The human defenders were ready. Colonel Webb had positioned his troops at every likely teleportation point, using predictive algorithms derived from the Kresh prisoners' information. The moment Kresh warriors began appearing, they were met with concentrated fire from prepared positions, but 500,000 was too many. The humans fought valiantly, but the Kresh had numbers on their side. They pushed deeper into the station, their energy weapons cutting through defensive positions. Civilians fled to the core shelters as the battle raged through the corridors. Human casualties mounted. 100 dead, then 200, then 500. Dr. Amara Okafor watched the tactical display from the research facility, now sealed off from the fighting but surrounded by Kresh forces. She had one prototype device left, a teleportation unit far more powerful than anything the fleet had deployed. It had been designed for emergency evacuation, capable of teleporting large masses across longer distances. She had not tested it fully. The risks were enormous, but as she watched human soldiers dying to buy time for civilians to escape, she made a decision. "Override the safety protocols," she told her assistant. "Maximum power. I need one jump with everything we have. Doctor, that could tear the station apart if it goes wrong. If it goes right, it could save everyone. Do it." She plotted the coordinates carefully, targeting the largest concentration of Kresh forces in the station's main concourse, where 10,000 warriors had gathered, preparing to push into the civilian shelters. The teleportation matrix hummed to life, drawing power from the station's core reactor. Amara entered the final command and prayed to God she was not sure she believed in. In the Tycho Station construction yards, a 500-ton tungsten cylinder designed as ballast for a new warship suddenly vanished. It reappeared in the exact center of the Kresh concentration on Olympus Station, traveling at terminal velocity, despite having been stationary a moment before. The laws of conservation of momentum briefly broke down in the quantum tunnel, and the result was catastrophic. The impact vaporized everything within 100 meters. The shockwave propagated through the concourse, killing or stunning every Kresh warrior in the area. The station's structure groaned but held, the reinforced construction absorbing the impact that would have destroyed a lesser facility. 10,000 Kresh died instantly. The survivors, scattered throughout the station, realized they had lost their numerical advantage and began retreating to their teleportation points. In orbit, Admiral Kowalski saw the Kresh fleet beginning to withdraw, their ground forces evacuating in disarray. He did not let them go easily. The human fleet pursued, teleporting mines into the retreat path, forcing the Kresh ships to scatter and exposing their engines to railgun fire. By the time the last Kresh vessel jumped to wormhole transit, only 89 ships remained of the 200 that had attacked. The Gettysburg's bridge erupted in cheers. They had done it again. Against overwhelming numbers and adapted technology, humanity had prevailed by doing what they did best, taking enemy advantages and turning them into weaknesses. The Kresh had teleportation, so humans learned teleportation and used it to deliver kinetic weapons. The Kresh had shields, so humans bypassed them. The Kresh had numbers, so humans used superior tactics and positioning. Colonel Webb stood in the ruins of the main concourse, looking at the crater where Dr. Okafor's teleportation strike had landed. His uniform was scorched, his face covered in soot, but he was smiling. They had held. 2 million civilians had survived. The station was damaged but intact, and the enemy was fleeing. "Sir, we have Dr. Okafor on comms," his lieutenant said. "She says she needs to be arrested for unauthorized use of experimental weaponry and reckless endangerment of station integrity." Marcus laughed, a sound of pure relief and exhaustion. "Tell her she's getting a medal instead, and then tell her I want 10 more of those devices built as soon as possible." Across the galaxy, the footage of the Battle of Olympus Station spread even faster than the first. The Council watched as humanity once again defeated a superior force, this time by stealing the enemy's own technology and combining it with their kinetic weapons to create something unprecedented. They saw the Kresh fleet broken and running. They saw the evidence that humanity could adapt, innovate, and overcome any challenge. In the council chambers, Representative Thelnara no longer sat in a position of authority. The Vrelnathi had been demoted after the first human victory. Now Thelnara watched from the lower seats as Council Arbiter Velmoth addressed the assembly. "Twice now, the humans have defeated forces that should have overwhelmed them. They have proven their weapons are not obsolete, merely different. They have also proven they can learn our technologies and integrate them with their own methods. The question before us is simple. Do we continue to treat them as primitive, or do we acknowledge that our assessment was flawed?" A Sorani representative pulsed. "They stole Kresh technology. That violates the technology transfer accords." "They took it from prisoners and salvage," Velmoth corrected, "just as any species would. And they did not simply copy it. They adapted it, improved it for their purposes, and used it in ways the Kresh never imagined. That is not theft. That is innovation." Thelnara stood, their crystalline form dim with shame. "I was wrong. I dismissed the humans as primitive because their methods differed from ours. I did not consider that different does not mean inferior. I asked the Council's permission to travel to human space and offer a formal apology." "Denied," Velmoth said. "The damage has been done. The humans know how the Council views them. An apology now would seem empty, a political gesture motivated by fear rather than genuine respect. No, we will watch and wait, and when the humans are ready, when they have proven themselves beyond any doubt, then we will approach them as equals, not before." The council session ended with no resolution, no change in humanity's status, and no relief from the restrictions that boxed them into their home system. But something had changed nonetheless. The galaxy no longer saw humanity as a curiosity or a joke. They saw a species that fought with weapons older than some civilizations, that adapted enemy technology in weeks rather than years, and that refused to accept defeat no matter the odds. Admiral Kowalski stood on the observation deck of Olympus Station, watching repair crews work on the damage from the battle. His fleet had taken losses. 7 ships destroyed, 15 damaged, 1,500 soldiers dead, 4,000 wounded. But they had won. The Kresh had learned that adapting to human weapons only meant humans would find new ways to make those weapons effective. "Admiral, message from Fleet Command," his aide said. "The Kresh Dominion has officially requested a ceasefire and negotiations. They also filed a formal complaint with the Council about our use of teleportation weapons, claiming we violated technology transfer laws." Kowalski smiled grimly. "Tell Fleet Command I recommend we accept the ceasefire. but make it clear that we reserve the right to use any weapons we deem necessary for our defense. As for the Council complaint, they can file it wherever they want. We didn't steal anything. We learned, we adapted, and we survived. If that bothers them, they should have thought of that before calling us primitive." The aide saluted and left. Kowalski remained at the window watching the stars. Humanity had won 2 battles, but the war for respect and recognition was far from over. The Council still classified them as pre-civilized. Other species still looked at human weapons with disdain, and somewhere out there someone was probably planning to test humanity again, to see if the victories were luck or skill. They would find out soon enough. Humanity had railguns, missiles, and now teleportation. They had determination, adaptability, and a refusal to accept defeat. They had been dismissed, restricted, and attacked. And every time they had come back stronger. The galaxy was learning a lesson the hard way. Never mistake different for weak. Never confuse primitive methods with primitive minds. And never ever back a human into a corner and expect them to give up without a fight. The Council's glory was beginning to crack. And humanity, armed with stolen teleporters and unstoppable railguns, was widening that crack with every battle, every victory, and every moment they refused to bow to species that thought themselves superior. The shock was just beginning. The news of humanity's second victory rippled through Council space like a shockwave. Within days, 6 minor species that had been classified as Category 7, just like humanity, sent quiet messages to Earth. They wanted to know how humanity had overcome their restrictions. They wanted to learn. They wanted hope that they too could break free from the Council's suffocating classifications. Ambassador Zhang Wei sat in his office on the lunar diplomatic station, reading the messages with a mixture of satisfaction and concern. Humanity had never sought to be revolutionaries or troublemakers. They had come to the stars looking for friends, for knowledge, for a place in the galactic community. Instead, they had been dismissed and caged. Now other caged species were looking to them for leadership. "This is going to make the Council very nervous," his aide said, reading over his shoulder. "Good," Zhang Wei said. "They should be nervous. They've maintained control for 12,000 years by deciding which species deserve advancement and which do not. We've proven their system is flawed. If other species follow our example, the entire Council structure could collapse." "Is that what we want?" Zhang Wei considered the question carefully. "I want humanity to be treated as equals. I want our children to grow up in a galaxy where their worth is judged by their character and achievements, not by whether their weapons match some arbitrary standard of civilization. If that requires the Council to change or fall, then so be it." The decision was made. Humanity would accept military consultation requests from the 6 species. They would not provide weapons or direct military support, but they would share tactics, strategies, and the philosophy behind their approach to warfare. They would plant the seeds of change throughout Council space. The Council did not react well to this development. Within a month, an emergency session was called. Representative Thelnara, stripped of most authority but still present, watched as the hardliners seized control of the discussion. At their head was Councillor Praxnoth, a member of the Keldari species, known for their rigid adherence to tradition and hierarchy. "The humans have become a destabilizing influence," Praxnoth declared, his 4 arms gesturing dramatically. "They refuse to adapt to civilized norms. They spread their barbaric methods to other primitive species. They violate the technological order that has maintained peace for millennia. This cannot be tolerated. What do you propose?" Council Arbiter Velmoth asked, the ancient energy being pulsed with what might have been weariness. "Containment by force," Praxnoth said. "A coalition fleet to blockade human space. Prevent them from spreading their influence further. Enforce the restrictions we placed upon them. Show the galaxy that the Council's authority cannot be challenged. You propose war against a species that has defeated every military force sent against them?" Velmoth asked. "The Kresh were one species acting alone. A proper Council fleet with proper coordination and overwhelming force will prevail. The humans may have tricks, but they cannot stand against the combined might of 15 Council species." Thelnara stood, knowing the words would probably be ignored, but feeling compelled to speak anyway. "This is a mistake. The humans have proven adaptable, creative, and determined. They have also shown restraint. They defeated the Kresh decisively but accepted a ceasefire. They could have pursued and destroyed the retreating fleet but chose not to. They are not the enemy you believe them to be." "They are exactly the enemy I believe them to be," Praxnoth said. A species that refuses to accept their place, that rejects the wisdom of the Council, that spreads chaos and change wherever they go. We will remind them why the Council has endured for 12,000 years, because we do not tolerate challenges to our authority. The vote was called. 15 species committed ships to the blockade fleet. 22 abstained or voted against the action, but their numbers were insufficient to prevent it. 300 warships representing the most advanced military technology in Council space would assemble at the border of human territory and enforce the containment protocols. Admiral Kowalski received the news while inspecting the new defense platforms at the edge of the human sphere. 300 ships, 15 different species, each with their own technologies and tactics. Energy weapons, particle beams, gravitational manipulators, matter disintegrators. Every type of advanced weaponry the Council had developed over thousands of years. It was the largest military force assembled in Council space in over 2 centuries. "They're trying to put us back in the box," Colonel Webb said. He had been promoted to general after Olympus Station, and now commanded all human ground forces, except this time they're using overwhelming force to do it. Analysis? Kowalski asked his tactical officers. "It's bad, sir," Commander Lisa Park said. She had replaced Marcus on the Gettysburg when he transferred to ground command. "Even with our teleportation weapons and kinetic advantages, 300 advanced warships are more than we can handle. Our entire fleet is 68 ships. We're outnumbered nearly 5 to 1. Can we evacuate the outer colonies?" Kowalski asked. "Pull everyone back to Earth and the inner system?" "Logistically possible, but politically disastrous," Janeway said via video link. "If we retreat, we lose credibility with the 6 species that reached out to us. We also lose 3 colony worlds we've spent decades building, and we prove the Council right, that we're weak and unworthy of our independence." Kowalski studied the tactical displays, running scenarios through his mind. Every simulation came back with the same result: defeat. The human fleet would be destroyed, the colonies would be blockaded or captured, and humanity would be forced back into Category 7 status, with even stricter restrictions, unless they found an edge, something the Council did not expect. "We need to make them not want to fight us," Kowalski said suddenly. "We can't win a straight battle, but we can make the cost of victory so high that they decide it's not worth it." "How?" General Webb asked. Kowalski smiled, but there was no humor in it. "We use every dirty trick humanity ever invented. We fight the way our ancestors fought when they were outnumbered and outgunned. We make them remember why primitive species survived long enough to reach the stars." The plan took shape over the next 3 weeks. Every available ship was refitted and rearmed. The civilian yards worked around the clock, building new weapons platforms, defensive satellites, and mobile minefields. Dr. Amara Okafor's team created new applications for teleportation technology that made the previous battles look conservative, and every human colony prepared for the worst while hoping for the best. The Council fleet arrived at the border of human space with great fanfare. Praxnoth commanded from his flagship, a massive dreadnought called Eternal Glory. The fleet arranged itself in a picket line, cutting off access to and from human territory. Their message was broadcast on all frequencies. "Humans of Earth and the colonies, this is Counselor Praxnoth speaking on behalf of the Galactic Council. You have violated the terms of your Category 7 classification by spreading your military methods to other restricted species. You have stolen technology that was not yours to take. You have refused to adopt civilized standards of warfare and society. By the authority granted to the Council by 12,000 years of galactic stewardship, we hereby enforce full containment. No human ship will be permitted to leave your restricted zone. No outside contact will be allowed until you comply with Council directives. This blockade will remain in place until such time as humanity demonstrates proper civilization or ceases to be a threat to galactic stability." Admiral Kowalski's response was broadcast from the Gettysburg, positioned at the head of the human fleet. "Counselor Praxnoth, this is Fleet Admiral James Kowalski of the United Earth Coalition. We reject your authority to blockade sovereign human territory. We reject your classifications and your restrictions. We came to the stars in peace and were met with contempt. We defended ourselves and were called barbaric. We learned and adapted and were called thieves. We will not accept containment. We will not surrender our independence. If you want to enforce your blockade, you will have to fight for it. And I promise you, Counselor, The cost will be higher than you can imagine. Empty threats from a primitive species. Praxnoth responded. You are outnumbered and outmatched. If you resist, we will destroy your fleet and occupy your worlds. This is your final warning. Then come and take them, Kowalski said and cut the transmission. The Council fleet advanced. The human fleet did not meet them head-on. Instead, human ships fell back, drawing the Council forces deeper into human space. Praxnoth, confident in his superiority, ordered his fleet to pursue. He was eager to end this quickly and prove the Council's dominance. The first surprise came when the Council fleet entered a region of space that seemed empty. Suddenly, thousands of objects materialized around them, small satellites barely the size of a person, each one armed with a single explosive charge and a simple guidance system. They had been teleported into position the moment the Council fleet entered the kill zone, appearing inside the sphere of ships where their defensive formations were useless. The mines detonated. They were not powerful enough to destroy capital ships, but they did not need to be. Each explosion sent shrapnel tearing through space, damaging sensors, weapons arrays, shield generators, and communications equipment. Dozens of ships were crippled in the first wave. The Council fleet recoiled, trying to reform. The second surprise came as they retreated. Human ships that had fallen back suddenly reappeared via short-range teleportation jumps, positioning themselves at optimal firing angles. Railguns opened fire, not at the ships themselves, but at the space around them. Thousands of tungsten pellets, each the size of a marble, created a debris field that the Council ships had to pass through. At the speeds involved, even a marble-sized projectile could cripple a ship. The Council fleet scattered, trying to avoid the debris and reform their lines. That was when the human fleet struck in earnest. Coordinated teleportation attacks placed larger projectiles inside shield perimeters. Missiles appeared at point-blank range, too close to intercept. Nuclear-pumped railgun rounds teleported directly into engine, sections, and reactor cores. Praxnoth watched, in horror, as his fleet took casualties without ever getting close enough to use their weapons effectively. The humans were not fighting fair. They were using hit-and-run tactics, teleportation ambushes, debris fields, and coordinated strikes that prevented the Council fleet from bringing their superior numbers and firepower to bear. This is not warfare, Praxnoth said. This is terrorism. This is survival, his tactical officer replied, and they are very good at it. The battle raged for 6 hours. The Council fleet pushed deeper into human space, taking losses at every step. Human ships danced around them, never committing to a direct engagement, always striking from unexpected angles. The teleportation technology, which the Council had dismissed as a stolen trick, proved to be the deciding factor. Human forces could reposition instantly, coordinate attacks across vast distances, and disappear before retaliation could be organized. When the Council fleet finally reached New Terra, they found it transformed into a fortress. Orbital platforms ringed the planet, each armed with railguns and teleportation systems. The planet itself had ground-based defenses that could teleport mines and missiles into orbit. And waiting in defensive positions were 30 human warships, fresh and fully armed, ready for a final stand. Praxnoth had lost 89 ships reaching this point. His fleet was scattered, damaged, and demoralized. His officers were reporting system failures, exhausted crews, and dwindling munitions. The humans had not destroyed his fleet, but they had bled it, worn it down, made every kilometer of advance cost blood and metal. We can still win, Praxnoth said. We still outnumber them. At what cost? His tactical officer asked. We have already lost nearly a third of our fleet. If we attack New Terra, the casualties will be catastrophic. And even if we win, we will be too damaged to hold our position. The humans will simply rebuild and attack when we are weak. Praxnoth's pride warred with his tactical sense. He had promised the Council a quick victory, a demonstration of power that would put humanity in its place. Instead, he had led 300 ships into a meat grinder and watched them get shredded by a species that should not have been able to resist. Sir, incoming transmission from Admiral Kowalski, the communications officer said. Kowalski's face appeared on the screen. He looked tired, his uniform scorched and dirty, but his eyes were hard and determined. Counselor Praxnoth, you have lost 89 ships and countless lives trying to enforce a blockade we never accepted. Your fleet is damaged and scattered. You are deep in hostile territory with no support and no reinforcements. I am offering you one chance to end this before more people die. Withdraw your fleet, return to Council space. We will not pursue. We will accept a ceasefire and negotiations. But if you continue this attack, I promise you will lose every remaining ship you have. We will destroy your fleet and you will return to the Council in disgrace. You cannot destroy us, Praxnoth said, but his voice lacked conviction. We are the Council. We are civilization itself. You are bureaucrats who forgot that civilization is built on respect, not control, Kowalski said. You are generals who forgot that advanced technology means nothing if you don't know how to use it. You are politicians who believed your own propaganda about superiority. And right now you are a fleet commander who is about to get everyone under his command killed because you're too proud to admit you made a mistake. The words hit harder than any railgun slug. Praxnoth looked at his tactical displays, at the damaged ships, at the exhausted crews, at the fortress of New Terra waiting to inflict more casualties. He looked at the numbers and realized that Kowalski was right. If he ordered the attack, he would probably take New Terra, but the cost would be the destruction of his fleet and his own death. I will convene with my fellow commanders, Praxnoth said stiffly. We will respond within the hour. The hour felt like eternity. On New Terra, General Webb positioned his troops for a ground battle he hoped would not come. On the Gettysburg, Admiral Kowalski watched the Council fleet and prepared for one more fight. On Earth, billions of people waited to learn if diplomacy or destruction would come next. Finally, the Council fleet began to withdraw, slowly, maintaining formation, ready to fight if attacked but clearly retreating. Praxnoth's message was brief. The Council fleet will return to neutral space to discuss terms for negotiation. This is not surrender. This is a tactical withdrawal. Call it whatever helps you sleep, Kowalski muttered, but he made sure the transmission was off. In public, he accepted the withdrawal gracefully and ordered his fleet not to pursue. The Battle of the Blockade ended without a climactic final confrontation, but its impact was far greater than any battle could have been. The Council had sent 300 ships to enforce their will on humanity. 89 had been destroyed or disabled, and the rest had retreated. The message was clear. Humanity could not be contained by force. Across Council space, the 6 species that had reached out to humanity watched and learned. 3 more species sent secret messages asking for consultation. The Category 7 classification, meant to keep primitive species in their place, was beginning to look like a cage that could not hold anyone who truly wanted to break free. In the Council chambers, Councillor Praxnoth faced censure and removal from his position. The hardliners who had supported the blockade found their authority diminished. And Council Arbiter Velmoth, who had warned against the blockade from the start, called for a special session to discuss the future of Council policy toward humanity. Representative Thelnara, watching from the lower seats, felt a strange mixture of vindication and sorrow. The Vrelnathi had been right to dismiss humanity's classification as Category 7, but they had been catastrophically wrong about why. Humanity was not primitive. They were not weak. They were simply different, and that difference had now shaken the foundations of the Council's 12,000-year dominance. The galaxy was changing. The old order was cracking, and at the center of that change was a species armed with railguns and stolen teleporters, who had proven that respect could not be granted or withheld by decree. It had to be earned, and if it could not be earned through diplomacy, humanity was more than willing to earn it through combat. The Council's glory had survived for 12 millennia. But glory built on the subjugation of those deemed lesser was fragile, and humanity, whether by intention or accident, had just delivered the first of many blows that would eventually bring that glory crashing down. 6 months after the failed blockade, the galaxy looked very different. The Council had not collapsed, but it had fractured. 12 species had formally withdrawn, forming their own coalition called the Independent Systems Alliance. They did not necessarily agree with humanity on everything, but they agreed that the Council's classification system was unjust, and its enforcement methods were tyrannical. Another dozen species remained in the Council but openly questioned its authority. The remaining Council members, now calling themselves the Traditional Council, struggled to maintain relevance. Their military had been humiliated. Their authority had been challenged. Their classifications had been proven arbitrary and unenforceable. Most damaging of all, 3 species formerly classified as Category 7 had risen up using tactics and strategies learned from humanity and successfully overthrew the restrictions placed upon them. The Council's 12,000-year dominance was ending, not with a bang, but with a slow, Inexorable decline. In the crystal spires of the Council's homeworld, Representative Thelnara stood before the Arbiter's chamber. The Vrelnathi had requested this private audience, knowing that what needed to be said could not be spoken in the open council. Velmoth's energy form pulsed with the deep blue that indicated serious contemplation. "You wish to speak about the humans," Velmoth said. "It was not a question." "I wish to speak about our mistakes," Thelnara said. "When I first encountered humanity, I saw only their weapons and judged them by that alone. I did not look at their history, their adaptability, their determination. I classified them as primitive and set in motion a chain of events that has destroyed the Council's unity. I was wrong, and I must make amends. The traditional Council will never allow you to approach humanity with an apology," Velmoth said. "They see it as weakness, as capitulation to barbarism." "Then I will leave the traditional Council," Thelnara said. "The Vrelnathi people are divided on this issue, but the majority now believe we should have welcomed humanity rather than caged them. I will speak for that majority. I will go to Earth and offer not just an apology, but an invitation." "What sort of invitation?" "To join the galactic community as full equals, not as Category 7, not as provisional members, as leaders of a new order that judges species by their character and achievements, not by whether their technology matches some arbitrary standard. The Council's way has failed. It is time for something new." Velmoth pulsed, the blue shifting to white, the color of decision. "Then go, Thelnara. The Arbiters will not stop you. In truth, many of us have waited for someone to take this step. The Council cannot reform from within. It needs external pressure. Perhaps humanity and their allies are exactly the pressure we need." 3 weeks later, a Vrelnathi diplomatic ship arrived at Earth orbit. The arrival caused immediate alarm. Vrelnathi vessels had not been seen in human space since the first contact evaluation. Admiral Kowalski, now promoted to Chief of Fleet Operations, personally took command of the reception. General Webb joined him, along with Ambassador Zhang Wei and Dr. Amara Okafor, whose teleportation technology had become the foundation of humanity's defensive doctrine. Thelnara arrived alone, without guards or military escort. The Vrelnathi stood in the reception chamber of the lunar diplomatic station, its crystalline form shifting through colors that indicated nervousness, regret, and hope. When it spoke, its voice was humble in a way that shocked everyone present. Ambassador Zhang Wei, Admiral Kowalski, General Webb, Dr. Okafor, and honored representatives of humanity. "I am Thelnara of the Vrelnathi, and I come before you with an apology long overdue. 5 years ago I evaluated your species and found you unworthy. I called your weapons primitive. I classified you as pre-civilized. I recommended restrictions that denied you the freedom to grow and explore. I was wrong in every possible way." The room was silent. This was unprecedented. Council representatives did not apologize. They did not admit mistakes. They certainly did not humble themselves before species they had dismissed as inferior. "Your weapons are not primitive," Thelnara continued. "They are effective, devastating, and perfectly suited to your approach to warfare. Your society is not barbaric. It is diverse, adaptable, and far more resilient than many species the Council considers advanced. Your methods are not inferior. They are simply different, and I failed to see that difference as strength rather than weakness." "Why tell us this now?" Zhang Wei asked. His diplomat's instincts told him there was more to this visit than simple apology. "Because the galaxy is changing, and humanity is at the center of that change," Thelnara said. 12 species have left the Council because of you. 20 others are considering it. The old order is collapsing because you proved it was built on false assumptions. The Council believed that technological advancement followed a single path, that civilization required abandoning certain methods in favor of others, that respect could be allocated by committee rather than earned through action. You have proven all of these beliefs wrong." The Vrelnathi's form shifted to a warm amber color. "The Vrelnathi people have voted to leave the traditional council. We are the first of the founding species to do so, and our departure will likely trigger more. We do not wish to join the Independent Systems Alliance, as they are primarily focused on independence rather than cooperation. We wish instead to propose something new. A galactic federation built on principles of mutual respect, technological diversity, and earned rather than granted authority. We would like humanity to be a founding member. alongside the Vrelnathi and any other species willing to embrace these principles. General Webb leaned over to Admiral Kowalski and whispered, "Is this a trap? If it is, it's the most elaborate one I've ever seen," Kowalski whispered back. Dr. Okafor spoke up, her scientist's mind cutting through the diplomatic language to the core issue. "What you're proposing would require the complete dismantling of the Council's power structure. The traditional Council would never accept it. You're essentially asking us to help you start a revolution." "Not a revolution," Thelnara said. "An evolution. The Council has existed for 12,000 years. It has accomplished many good things. But it has also become rigid, hierarchical, and unable to adapt to new realities. Your arrival forced us to confront these flaws. Some species, like the traditional Council members, have chosen denial. Others, like my people, have chosen acceptance and change. We are not asking you to destroy the Council. We are asking you to help build something better." Ambassador Zhang Wei stood and walked to the window, looking out at Earth below. He had spent 5 years fighting for humanity's recognition. 5 years of diplomatic battles, military conflicts, and constant struggle against species that thought themselves superior. Now one of those species was offering partnership, respect, and the chance to reshape galactic civilization. It felt too good to be true, which meant he needed to examine it carefully. What would humanity gain from this arrangement? He asked. And please be honest. What do you need from us that you cannot get elsewhere? Thelnara's form flickered. A color pattern Zhang Wei had learned meant respect for a difficult question. Honestly, we need your legitimacy. The Vrelnathi leaving the Council is significant, but we are seen as traitors by the traditional Council and opportunists by the Independent Systems Alliance. If we approach other species alone, they will question our motives. But if humanity stands with us, species that have watched you fight for your independence, that have seen you defend your principles against overwhelming odds, they will listen. You have earned something we cannot claim. Moral authority. You did not seek to overthrow the Council. You simply refused to accept unjust treatment. That distinction matters. And what do we gain? General Webb asked, his military pragmatism showing. Besides the warm feeling of galactic cooperation. Protection through alliance, Thelnara said. The traditional Council still exists, still has military power, and still views humanity as a threat. The Kresh Dominion, though weakened, harbors deep hatred for you. There are other species, some you have not encountered, that see your rise as a challenge to their own interests. Alone, humanity is strong but vulnerable, with allies who possess technologies you lack, energy weapons you have not developed, shield systems you have not encountered. You become much harder to threaten. You're saying we complete each other, Dr. Okafor said with a slight smile. Your advanced technology and our kinetic warfare combined would create something unprecedented. Precisely, Thelnara said. Your railguns and teleportation hybrids are devastating against energy-based defenses. Our particle shields and disintegrator beams are effective against physical armor. Together, we could field a military that has no weakness, no blind spot that enemies could exploit. But more importantly, we could build a civilization that does not require military dominance to maintain order, one based on cooperation, shared innovation, and genuine respect. The debate lasted 3 days. The human leadership was divided. Some, like General Webb, were suspicious of Council species bearing gifts no matter how sincere they seemed. Others, like Dr. Okafor, saw the potential for incredible technological advancement through cooperation. Ambassador Zhang Wei found himself in the middle, trying to balance caution with opportunity. Finally, they put it to a vote among Earth's governing coalition and the 3 colony governments. The result was narrow but decisive. Humanity would accept the Vrelnathi proposal with conditions. There would be no hierarchical structure in the new federation. No species would have veto power over others. Technology sharing would be mutual and voluntary. And most importantly, no species would be required to abandon their traditional weapons or methods unless they chose to do so. The announcement sent shockwaves through the galaxy. Humanity and the Vrelnathi, the species that had first dismissed them, were forming a new alliance. Within weeks, 7 other species requested to join the nascent federation. Within months, that number grew to 23. The new organization called itself the Galactic Coalition for Cooperative Progress, but everyone simply called it the Coalition. The traditional council watched with growing alarm as their influence dwindled. Councillor Praxnoth, who had survived his disgrace through political maneuvering, rallied the hardliners for one final attempt to reassert council authority. But the attempt fell apart before it began. 3 more founding species announced their departure from the council, and the military forces that remained were insufficient to threaten the coalition's combined strength. On the bridge of his flagship, now renamed the Unity, Admiral Kowalski watched as the first joint human-Vrelnathi patrol began. Human ships armed with railguns and teleportation systems flew alongside Vrelnathi vessels, with energy shields and particle cannons. The crews trained together, learning each other's tactics and technologies. It was strange, uncomfortable at times, but it worked. Picking up a distress signal, Commander Park reported. It's a Kresh vessel. Looks like they've been attacked by pirates. Heavy damage. Life support failing. Kowalski felt the old anger rise. The Kresh had attacked New Terra, killed human civilians and forced 2 brutal battles before accepting defeat. Part of him wanted to leave them to their fate. But he was no longer just a military commander defending human territory. He was now a coalition officer responsible for maintaining the principles they had founded their new alliance upon. Send a rescue team, he ordered. Human and Vrelnathi both. Let's show them what cooperation looks like. The rescue took 6 hours. The Kresh survivors, including a minor functionary from their diplomatic corps, were brought aboard the Unity. They were terrified, expecting execution or imprisonment. Instead, they received medical treatment, food, and comfortable quarters. When the Kresh diplomat asked why they were being helped, Kowalski's answer was simple. Because that's what civilized species do. We judge you by your actions today, not by what your government did years ago. If you want to hate us, that's your choice. But we won't abandon people in need just because their species once declared war on us. The Kresh diplomat said nothing, but Kowalski saw something shift in the alien's compound eyes. Understanding, perhaps, or shame, or the beginning of respect. When the Kresh were returned to their own territory, they carried with them a story that would spread through the Dominion and beyond. Meanwhile, the Kresh Dominion itself was collapsing. The military disasters against humanity had triggered internal strife. Reformist factions, tired of aggressive expansion and military rule, rose up against the warrior castes. Civil war erupted. The galaxy watched as one of its most feared military powers tore itself apart from within. War Prime Zixthak, now in exile after being blamed for the defeats, watched from a small station on the edge of Kresh space. He had lost everything, his command, his honor, his position, but he had gained something unexpected: perspective. He sent a message to Admiral Kowalski, encoded in private. I judged your species by your tools and called them primitive. I judged your methods and called them barbaric. I thought advanced technology meant inevitable victory. I was wrong. Your species survived by adapting, by using every advantage available, by refusing to accept defeat even when outmatched. That is not primitive. That is the essence of what allows species to reach the stars and thrive among them. I do not ask for forgiveness. I do not deserve it. But I wanted you to know that you taught me something my own people never could. That wisdom is not the same as technology, and strength is not the same as superiority. Kowalski read the message 3 times. He did not share it widely, but he did save it. Someday historians would want to know how this era had felt to those who lived through it. Githic's words captured something essential about the transformation happening across the galaxy. 5 years after Representative Thelnara had arrived on Earth with an apology, humanity stood at the center of a galactic community of 47 species. The coalition had grown into a true federation, with joint military forces, shared research facilities, and open trade. The traditional council still existed, reduced to a mere 15 species, clinging to their old hierarchies and classifications. They posed no threat, only a reminder of what had been. The change was not without problems. Cultural conflicts arose. Some species struggled to adapt to the coalition's egalitarian structure. Others resented humanity's prominent role, seeing them as upstarts who had risen too quickly. But the problems were manageable because the system allowed for disagreement. Debate and resolution without forcing conformity. Captain Sarah Okonkwo, now an admiral herself and captain of the Endeavour II, stood on the bridge alongside her Vrelnathi co-captain, Relmora. The new ship was a marvel, incorporating technologies from a dozen species. It had human railguns and Vrelnathi energy weapons. It had Serani shields and human armor plating. It had teleportation systems designed by Dr. Okafor and propulsion engines created through collaborative research. It was the physical embodiment of what the coalition represented: diversity creating strength. "We have our orders," Relmora said, their crystalline form shifting through colors that Sarah had learned to read almost as well as human expressions. "Exploration mission to the Andromeda frontier. 6 months, 20 systems looking for new species to contact. Just like the original endeavor," Sarah said, "going out to meet the unknown. Except this time we're not going alone. And this time," Relmora added, "we know what to say when we meet them. Not join us or be classified. Not our way is the only way. Simply, we are explorers from the coalition. We come in peace, seeking friendship, knowledge, and cooperation. You are welcome to join us as equals, or simply to know us as neighbors. The choice is yours," Sarah smiled. "Think they'll accept?" "Some will not. But we offer them something the Council never did: genuine choice without judgment. That alone will make a difference." The Endeavour 2 departed Earth orbit, accompanied by a small fleet of coalition vessels representing 8 different species. They jumped to wormhole transit, beginning a journey that would take them far beyond explored space. Behind them, Earth continued its transformation from an isolated world to a hub of galactic civilization. Human cities now hosted aliens from dozens of species. Human scientists worked alongside Vrelnathi researchers, Sorani philosophers, and Haltorian engineers. Human children grew up knowing that the galaxy was vast, diverse, and full of people who were different but not inferior. In a small apartment on Olympus Station, Dr. Amara Okafor worked on her latest project. She had spent years refining teleportation technology, but now she was working on something more ambitious: a universal translator that could learn new languages in real time, making first contact with unknown species smoother and more successful. It was tedious work, requiring collaboration with linguists, xenologists, and AI specialists from multiple species, but it was satisfying in a way that weapons development had never been. "Dr. Okafor, you have a visitor," her assistant said. Thelnara entered, the Vrelnathi's form displaying the warm amber of friendship. They had become unlikely colleagues over the years, working together on various technical projects. The awkwardness of their first meeting had long since faded into mutual respect. "I wanted to thank you," Thelnara said. 5 years ago, I dismissed your species based on a superficial evaluation. Today, you are one of the galaxy's leading voices for technological cooperation and innovation. You proved that my classification system was not just wrong but fundamentally flawed. You showed that diversity in methods and approaches creates strength rather than weakness. Amara set down her tools and looked at the alien who had once called humanity primitive. "You know what the funny part is? We never wanted to prove anyone wrong. We just wanted to be left alone to explore, to grow, to find our place among the stars. The Council forced us to fight for that right. The Kresh attacked us. You all made us into warriors when we really just wanted to be explorers. And now you are both," Thelnara observed. "Warriors when necessary, explorers by choice. Perhaps that balance is what the galaxy needs. Species that can defend their principles without making warfare their purpose. Species that can adapt without losing their identity." "The Council's glory lasted 12,000 years, Amara said. How long do you think ours will last?" "I do not know," Thelnara admitted. "But I believe we have a better chance because we built it on honesty rather than hubris. We acknowledged our mistakes. We learned from those who we had dismissed. We created something based on cooperation rather than hierarchy. That may not guarantee success, but it gives us the best possible foundation." Later that day, a monument was unveiled on Luna's surface, visible from Earth. It was a simple structure, just a pillar of metal with inscriptions in 47 languages. The inscription read, "Here began the journey that changed the galaxy, not with conquest or force, but with the simple insistence on dignity, respect, and the right to exist on our own terms. We came to the stars with railguns because that was what we knew. We learned to build teleporters because adaptation is what we do. We changed the galaxy not by becoming what others wanted, but by showing what we truly were. May all who follow remember, civilized is not defined by the tools you use, but by the principles you uphold." At the base of the monument, smaller text added a note that made many smile. They said our weapons were primitive. They were right. They said primitive meant weak. They were wrong. They said we should abandon our ways and adopt theirs. We said we would do both. and that made all the difference. Admiral Kowalski stood at the monument's dedication, surrounded by human and alien dignitaries. He thought back to that first contact 5 years ago, when humanity had been dismissed and caged. He thought about the battles fought, the lives lost, and the hard-won respect that had followed. He thought about the galaxy they were building together, imperfect but honest, diverse but united, different but equal. "We did it," General Webb said, standing beside him. "We actually did it. We changed the galaxy. We survived," Kowalski corrected. "We adapted. We refused to give up. The galaxy changed itself. We just showed it that change was possible." "Same thing," Webb said with a grin. "Maybe," Kowalski admitted, "but I prefer to think of it this way. They built teleporters first because that's what made sense to them. We built railguns first because that's what made sense to us. And then we built both because that's what humans do. We take what works from everywhere, combine it with what we already know, and create something new. That's not primitive or advanced. That's just human. And finally, that's enough." The ceremony ended. The dignitaries dispersed. Life in the coalition continued, with all its complexities, conflicts, and compromises. The traditional council faded into historical irrelevance. The Kresh Dominion reformed under new leadership that sought peace rather than conquest. And humanity, the species once classified as Category 7, pre-civilized, stood as one of the founding pillars of a galactic civilization built on respect, cooperation, and the understanding that there was no single path to the stars. The Council's glory had fallen. But from its ruins, something better had emerged, something that honored diversity, celebrated difference, and recognized that civilized did not mean conforming to arbitrary standards. It meant treating all sentient beings with dignity, regardless of whether they fought with energy beams or kinetic weapons, whether they had mastered teleportation millennia ago or learned it yesterday. The galaxy had learned a hard lesson, one that cost lives, pride, and the collapse of ancient institutions. But it was a lesson worth learning. Never mistake different for inferior, never confuse advanced with superior, and never, ever underestimate a species that has survived by adapting to every challenge their harsh universe could throw at them. Humanity had come to the stars with railguns. They had learned to build teleporters, and in doing so, they had torn down the walls of arrogance and supremacy that had divided the galaxy for 12,000 years. The shock that destroyed the Council's glory was not a weapon or a battle. It was a simple truth, proven through blood and determination. That respect cannot be granted by committee or denied by classification. It must be earned one action at a time, one choice at a time, one moment of standing firm in the face of overwhelming pressure at a time. Humanity had earned it, and the galaxy would never be the same.